a.m. We're going to give folks some time. If you are tuning in, if you're watching us live on Facebook, we are waiting for more people to get into the room to get ready for our monthly Pierce County Community Engagement Task Force meeting. And as folks are logging on to be in the actual Zoom room with us, you are welcome to start a watch party. If you're joining us now, you can start a watch party on a separate device where you can ask your friends, comrades, peers to join in so they can see what great work we're doing, what we're discussing. We have a great presentation today. We have a great agenda today, and I don't want to delay it too long. So I'm going to give folks just a little more time. It looks like I've got 3 pages already. And we've got 57 folks logged on already. And because we have a heavy weighted agenda, we're going to swing into it and we're going to get started here in about 1 minute. I guess at 9:02 I'll start. It's 9:03 now, it's 9:02 now. These clocks are off, so we're gonna get started. So my name is Shelly Willis. I am the Senior Director of Workforce Systems Alignment and Military Initiatives at Workforce Central. And I am also the Master Facilitator of this magnanimous group of great minds of community investors and collaborators who have invested and signed on to be a part of the Pierce County Community Engagement Task Force. And so as I am facilitating through this meeting, I would ask that you keep yourself on mute. When we do the roll call, you know how we do it. You can go ahead and start blowing up the chat roll call with all of your information in it, introducing yourselves. We'll go ahead and get that started. If you're watching us streaming live from Facebook, you can go ahead and put your comments in the chat. I think Jeff is trying to dual monitor that. He's going to learn a lesson in a little bit. I forgot to talk to you about that yesterday. You're going to need some help. So with that being said, we want to kick this month's meeting off by, Joanna is helping too. Yes, great. Because you got to monitor both streams. So we're kicking this off, and we want to recognize one of the things that we wanted to make sure we started to do is recognize all months, all groups, everything that we talk about, we have to be about, right? So this is Black History Month, and it's an annual celebration of achievements by African Americans and a time for recognizing their central role in U.S. history. Also known as African American History Month, the event grew out of Negro History Week, the brainchild of noted historian Carter G. Woodson and other prominent African Americans. Since 1976, every U.S. president has officially designated the month of February as Black History Month. Other countries around the world, including Canada and United Kingdom, also devote a month to celebrating Black history. Find a way to incorporate all history that is U.S. history into your conversations, talkings, learnings with your family, your friends, letting them know all of the great impacts that we all have made to make this America, right? So we wanted to make sure we kick that off with that. We're going to turn it over to Jeff so that we can do our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Shelly. Good morning, everybody. Okay. We pay our respect to the elders, both past and present, who have stewarded this land throughout generations. We also express our respect for all of the displaced Indigenous peoples who call Pierce County home. These are original homelands of the Nisqually, Puyallup, Squaxin, Steilacoom, and Muckleshoot. It is important to move beyond acknowledgement and reflect on your own history that brought you to this place. This land acknowledgement is one small step in an ongoing commitment to improve our support of Indigenous communities in the area. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to turn it over to Tamar for his message, and then I'll take it from there and we'll start rolling into our Lens of Equity mini-series. Tamar?
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Man, 76 beautiful faces on February 3rd to roll in Black History Month with us. I really hope over the last year, every last one of you guys realize that you're important. You guys are all stars. Everything that you guys do is for this community, and it's out of passion. It's not because we get paid for what we do, it's because we love what we do. So really, we live for our passions. And I appreciate every last one of you guys for doing that. Again, my name is Tamar Jackson, Director of Community Engagement for Workforce Central. And I get to be on this journey with you guys. It's been crazy. We've been through COVID, but we made it. We came into 2021. Everybody's getting great news. And we're going to continue to grow together. You know, I always say that the task force is the new Motown. We are. We got a bunch of stars in here, but we know when it's time to make that classic hit to serve this community, we all come back home. We all collaborate with each other. We all come in different fields. We all come in different shades, different beliefs, but we do this together. We just support and love each other. So coming into the task force, for anybody that's new, understand that we are a support system. We are powered by Workforce Central and their mission on serving this community to the best possible way that we can. Everything we do in this group, we do it as a group, and we all get this win together. With that being said, welcome. It's going to be a great day. I'm so excited. Let's get turned up. Let's get ready to go to Loop City.
All right, it's time to get into the loop. I hope you all are ready. Oh, we got 4 pages. I'm seeing 77 folks. Y'all, let me tell y'all something. I need a big screen. That's all I'm going to say. I need a big screen. I don't know if we can take a community collection or what, but I just need like a Super Bowl size screen, or I'm going to have to transition into the living room so I can just see all of your faces. So because this is streaming live on Facebook, we want you to know and understand, hopefully you are okay with that. If you are not, please let us know going forward, something to think about, just so you know that it's on our Pierce County Community Engagement Task Force page. Please share, please like, please invite or start watch parties, cut your volume down, and let's get this party started. So we're going to roll into our Lens of Equity mini-series, and we're going to kick it off with the amazing Michael Jordan, who's going to do the introductions. If you have the agenda, if you're following it along, after our Lens of Equity mini-series, we'll go into updates, quick initiate, overview, progress, and needs from the different groups. We'll also have 2 breakouts today. We have 2 breakouts to just have some general discussion. And then we have some breakouts during the Lens of Equity mini-series. So as we transition over to that presentation, get ready. I'm going to hand it over to Michael Jordan so that we can get this mini-series started. Michael, it's all yours.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Jordan, Pierce County resident, business owner, consultant. They asked me to talk. Still not sure why, but I'm here. We are focusing on the Lens of Equity mini-series. As a photographer, this is really interesting because photographers know the better your lens, the better your images. And in this situation, as we're looking at equity, what they call, my mind just went blank. But what we're looking at is people, practice, policy, and promotion. Can we go to the next slide? Each of these parts of the mini-series are gonna focus on different areas that we're, as a community and group, working to bring clarity and understanding to the businesses and the ways that we make an impact. This month will be, go ahead, Chad. The Organizational Structures Committee is what is putting this all together. We meet monthly on the 3rd Thursday of the month at 10 a.m. Past projects include the housing of resources, including a lexicon, resource educational guide, and organizational assessment. For the 4-part Lens of Equity mini-series that you're seeing now. And our future projects are the Lens of Equity Summit in June. So these 4 mini-series are short snippets getting you ready for that. Getting ready for that event in June, and as well as the gold standard onboarding process. Okay, next slide. And growing resources. The people group who will be presenting today is brought to you or containing Tanisha Price, Sarah Ciambroni, Alice Massara, and Carissa Thompson. Next slide. And we'll be going over organizational culture and team connection, which Carissa will present, and then employee engagement, which Tanisha will present. And with that, I believe.
Sorry, I was on mute, Michael. Thank you so much. This is Carissa. Hello, everyone, and thanks for having us for this presentation. I'm excited to talk about how organizational culture can impact your business in a positive way, but also, if not done well or at all, could also be negative. So some statistics I wanted to point out today is over half of your employees cite that senior management is important to, a trusted senior management is important to the satisfaction of their employment. Also, 88% of employees feel that strong organizational culture is key to business success, which is amazing because 94% of executives feel the same way. So let's back up a little bit and define organizational culture. So organizational culture is a set of shared values, goals, attitudes, and practices that characterize an organization. Now, keep in mind, if you are not spearheading or leading the charges in organizational structure, your team will develop that organizational culture. And this is where it can get sticky. So if you are an employee that does not see organizational structure as a key point in your organization, this is where you could lead the charge and have a voice in that. But additionally, if you don't have people who are spearheading that in a positive way, it can also lead it in a negative way. So if you are a part of leadership and you're on this call and you are not seeing organizational culture as being a forefront of your company, then I would suggest to really hone in on this and see how you could develop that. So going back to deep dive into shared values, one of the things to remember is as an organizational leader, you cannot force shared values onto other people, or you shouldn't try either. What you need to remember is each individual has their own set of personal and professional values that creates the diversity and is key for a strong culture. Leadership can create a culture that helps and foster these important connections. And through that, here's some of the steps. So one, you can leverage your organization's mission and vision. So if you don't already have a vision and mission, this is a key component to moving and propelling your business forward. There's many different organizations that you can hire in to help you with this. And strategize, and many that exist here in the Pierce County Community Engagement Task Force. Also, a really strong key to it is using mentorship to foster connections among coworkers. So some of your employees that maybe have been there a little bit longer, know the culture or understand the values that the company has. It's a great opportunity to allow them to shine in these new relationships with new employees. One, it takes some of that heavy lift off some of the leadership, but two, it really places people in a position of ownership and power in your company, leading with your team first, as opposed to leading with leaders first. So it's a great way to get folks involved and embedded within your company. The third one, measure employee engagement within your organizations. And a little bit later, we'll talk about ways that you can do that. But having ways that you could do a checkpoint and check-ins with your employees on a continual basis is very important. Next, we are going to discuss shared goals. So part of shared goals is getting your team involved. So the importance of getting your team involved is it creates a sense of buy-in from your team. If you're creating goals as a leadership team and you're just throwing them out at your team and expecting them to meet those goals without understanding why or how it was created, you're creating an opportunity for stagnant. Let them help with your short-term and long-term planning. So this creates, again, buy-in, and maybe they're going to help you see something that you didn't necessarily think about. So one, a team that plans together oftentimes stays together. So you find folks getting a lot more commitment whenever you have people who were in it from the beginning and then see it to the end. Also, asking your team to set individual goals as well as team goals. So what does the full pie look like of what we're trying to achieve? And then what's my small piece to it? And once people can see how it all works together in the full pie aspect, they then realize the importance of their part. And again, we'll stick with it. Identify your team needs from leadership and ensure success by asking the questions and listening. So what are the different trainings, the different check-ins that you need to have, any accountability meetings or celebration meetings? If leadership can do check-in points with their team on a consistent basis, not to micromanage, but just to see if there's support needed along the way, this can be very beneficial for goal attainment. A while back, I took a training called the Disney Experience through an employer that I used to work for. And when taking this training, one of the things that Disney really tries to set in with their folks when they were first coming in, so through the onboarding process, through a continual training basis, is they ask for folks to help inspire an environment where people ask you stupid questions over and over, but you're excited about it. So how they illustrated that was, you know, when they have employees come in, they are playing a role. So for example, if I am cleaning the streets, I am a street sweeper and I'm in my full uniform and, you know, I look like part of the cast. Well, when you're a street sweeper, oftentimes you will get asked the same dumb question over and over and over. And when you've heard it 352 times in one day, it can seem frustrating. But when the person asks it, it's the first time that they're asking it. So how do we get excited and celebrate that? So for example, you know, when they come, you know, a patron will come up and say, you know, I was wondering what time your 3 o'clock parade starts, right? Well, stupid question because you said 3 o'clock in your question, but they're really asking, where does it start? Where's the best seat? How, you know, how can I make sure that I have a full experience? So Disney really captured that to say, our culture is going to be that we are excited no matter what, that people are visiting us. And even if it seems to be a dumb question, we're still going to get behind it and excited about it. So to create some of these shared practices that characterize your organizations, thinking about the no matter what's. So with Disney, their no matter what was, if somebody asks you a question, no matter what it is, be excited about it, right? So in your organizations, what are some of the no matter what? So how can your team expect to be treated by leadership? So what are the no matter what's there? If I, as an employee, walk into our company and I'm not greeted, I'm not welcomed in or have that, you know, relationship with my leadership, and it's, you know, a punch in, punch out, just get the job done, and there's no relationship, that can pose to be a problem. Some people may thrive in that, but many don't. And so what is your no matter what's as leadership? So how are you treating your employees and what's the level of service you're providing for them? Additionally, when you can expect it from leadership, then you can start expecting it from your team. So with your team, what are your no matter what's with your team? When a client walks through the door, they're greeted within 3 seconds, or, you know, they're acknowledged. When a team member is struggling, instead of watching them flounder, you pull in and, you know, find out how you can help or assist them. And lastly on this slide, what are the expectations for reporting and correcting behavior, especially if it doesn't fit with the culture? And additionally, what are your expectations for reporting good behavior? So often we get into our roles as either leadership or, you know, what have you, and we feel like we're always looking for what's wrong as opposed to what is right. And if we could do a much better job of looking for what's right and start celebrating those things, naturally people will want to do those things that were right. So we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about empathetic leadership. This is probably my favorite topic because with empathetic leadership, all is possible. I was once told that there's two ways to lead people. One is through fear and one is through respect. Leading through fear will make people do what you want, but for a limited time, right? So they will do what you've asked of them, but then when something else comes up, they're out of there. And not only that, but if what you're asking goes outside of what the expectation of the paycheck is, you're not going to get much more. But if you lead with respect, leading with respect will create loyalty and dedication. And your team will produce things that you and they can dream of. There's no limits whenever you lead with respect. So learning as a leader to light a fire within people instead of under. I don't know if you maybe could think of an example of a time when you felt really pressured at work. You know, there was just a lot coming at you, and it maybe didn't flow well for you. You know, there wasn't like a smooth process in getting things done. Now, some people can thrive in that, to have that pressure cooker, but so many more, if you can light a fire within people and help them feel passionate about what they do and align their vision and their mission internally with one of the company, you'll see that fire spark within, and again, achieve so much more. There's a video, and we're gonna check out a little snippet of it, but I would absolutely encourage you to go back in and watch the full video. It's about 22 minutes long. But it's by Simon Sinek, and it's Empathetic Leadership. And one of the things that he says in here that I really would love for folks to think about today is, it's not about being in charge, it's about taking care of those in our charge. So we're going to listen to a little 2-minute snippet from him and then kind of chat about that. Also, if you have any questions, please put them in the comments. Or we'll take some questions after.
There are two things that I think that great leaders need to have: empathy and perspective. And I think these things are very often forgotten. Leaders are so often so concerned about their status or their position in an organization, they actually forget their real job. And the real job of a leader is not about being in charge, it's about taking care of those in our charge. And I don't think people realize this, and I don't think people train for this. When we're junior, our only responsibility is to be good at our jobs. That's all we really have to do. And some people actually go get advanced educations so that they can be really good at their jobs, accountants or whatever, right? And you show up and you work hard, and the company will give us tons and tons of training how to do our jobs. They'll show us how to use the software. They'll send us away for a few days to get trained in whatever it is that we're doing for the company. And then they expect us to go be good at our jobs. And that's what we do. We work very hard. And if you're good at your job, they'll promote you. And at some point, you'll get promoted to a position where we're now responsible for the people who do the job we used to do, but nobody shows us how to do that. And that's why we get managers and not leaders. Because the reason our managers are micromanaging us is because they actually do know how to do the job better than us. That's what got them promoted. Really what we have to do is go through a transition. Some people make it quickly, some people make it slowly, and unfortunately some people will never make that transition at all. Which is we have to go through this transition of being responsible for the job and then turning into somebody who's now responsible for the people who are responsible for the job. And as I said before, one of the great things that is lacking in most of our companies is that they are not teaching us how to lead. And leadership is a skill like any other. It is a practicable, learnable skill. And it is something that you work on. It's like a muscle. If you practice it all the days, you will get good at it and you will become a strong leader. If you stop practicing, you will become a weak leader. Like parenting, everyone has the capacity to be a parent. Doesn't mean everybody wants to be a parent, and doesn't mean everybody should be a parent. Leadership is the same. We all have the capacity to be a leader. Doesn't mean everybody should be a leader, and it doesn't mean everybody wants to be a leader. And the reason is because it comes at great personal sacrifice. Remember, you're not in charge, you're responsible for those in your charge.
Man, I love that video. And again, I strongly encourage you to go and listen to the full 22 minutes of it, because it's so impactful and powerful. One of the things that really stood out to me in the concept of empathetic leadership, we have a situation where our clients are our front facing, right? So even as we get into leadership, we look at our customers or client base as the ones who have all the voice. When you switch over into empathetic leadership, one of the concepts is when I am a leader and I look at my employees, my team is now my client base. So now my goal is to ensure that my employees / customers are getting 100% customer service, well taken care of. As leaders, we have gone through training and development and all of these different things. Hopefully you've been through training and development, but we've been through these different stages in our career that have taught us how we could potentially bend to our employees, right? So it's interesting that we still live in a society where we expect our employees, who some of them are like just getting out of high school and just getting started, we expect them to bend to us. And so through empathetic leadership, it takes a bit of a twist, and it's where leadership and employees can meet in the middle and create a little bit more synergy around success. And so, Tanisha, I want to go ahead and pass it over to you because you had some wonderful thoughts about this empathetic leadership too.
Good morning. This is Tanisha Price from Pierce Transit, and I'm going to be talking to you about empathetic leadership and looking at it from an equity lens perspective. Next slide, please. So one of the things that's really important as leaders is to seek out opportunities to engage with employees. So what this looks like is supporting the experiences of others and engaging with them and having some of those difficult conversations so that you can really dive deep and find out what type of barriers are folks experiencing, and also to create a sense of transparency to be able to, have one-on-one conversations. It essentially starts to build trust between one another from employees and also the leadership team as well. And you want to make an effort to interact with other people from different walks of life. So in order to really understand the perspective of others, it's really key to have, conversations, even if it's just a casual experience that you're having with someone and you're just asking a little bit more to find out who they are and what they believe in, and what that experience translates in the workplace can be so vital to really understand one another. And it's also important to recognize and support your employees. So take the time to acknowledge employees for exceptional work that they do. You want to check in on employees that are not performing as high, just to see, maybe there's a particular reason as to why that individual isn't performing as they should. Are there some situations at home? Are they, for example, are they a single parent and being able to get to work on time is challenging because they have to run errands before getting to work with their children? So I think it's just really important to acknowledge employees and really understand, where they're coming from. Next, please. And then learn to recognize and understand white privilege. So I think sometimes we get caught up and you know, we don't necessarily know how we can help, especially some of our white counterparts. You know, really there's a way that you can engage, and it's all together. It's all one unit. And we want to think about it as using that privilege to help empower others. What does that look like? It requires being aware of those privileges first and foremost, and acknowledging their implications. So, you know, find out ways where you can really engage with other people. Is it you can be a mentor to someone else? You know, really tap into some of our underrepresented groups and find out, are there ways that you can encourage them? Or are there areas where you've noticed that opportunities came, well, I should say opportunities surpassed, you know, those underrepresented groups, and you saw an opportunity where you could have helped that individual. So just kind of think about ways where you could assist in that way. It's also important to conduct an employee engagement survey to gauge staff needs. So we want to provide employees with an opportunity to voice their ideas and concerns, and employee engagement surveys are a great way to do that. And we also have some resources that we're going to share with you for specific questions that I particularly used at one of our engagement surveys at Pierce Transit. And we found it really helpful just to really ask those questions to really find out some of the barriers that people were experiencing. So we also want to identify the gaps by impeding career growth and development. And when we sent out the survey, that was one of those responses that we kept on noticing, where people were finding that they weren't moving within the company where they wanted to grow. And so, you know, as an employer, it's important to listen to that feedback and figure out ways to really empower individuals. So some of the things that we did and what you can think about are, you know, developing mentorship programs or internship programs. Just look at what you can do as an agency to support your people. You want to conduct an analysis of gaps within the agency regarding DEAI efforts. So it's really important just to really look at your agency as a whole, look at the culture, and figure out, are there areas where we need to improve, and act on it. Next, please. Thank you. Identify solutions to address concerns and take deliberate steps to mitigate these gaps. So, you know, yes, you can identify all these things that you want to change, or you hear the feedback from staff, but it's important that you move forward on taking action so that you can improve things. And employees will value that too, when you listen to their feedback and you do something to create change to help move them forward. Next, please. So some of the types of questions to include in an employee engagement survey. Next, please. Including company culture, demographics, questions to really identify the best form of communication, so how you get your message out. Open-ended questions that allow people to provide details about any specific issues or concerns. Also, you want to ask questions about whether or not people feel as if the company provides an inclusive and collaborative environment. Definitely questions to identify if they feel that there's support from leadership, because we understand the value of top-down approach, always wanting to get that support from above so that it filtrates down. And then opportunities for career growth and development, which I talked about a little bit before. Next, please. So as I mentioned, it's definitely important to listen to employees and take action. You want to review those survey results with the leadership team and develop initiatives to move forward. You want to address specific employee concerns. So if you don't already have a system set up where employees can formally file specific complaints or any issues that they have, make sure that you establish something so that employees know that there is a safe place where they can communicate those concerns. And provide transparency by sharing results. So it's really important that, yes, you're doing all these engagement surveys, but share the results with employees, because the more you are transparent, the more that they will see and value that, hey, if we're not where we need to be as an agency, we're showing a pattern of where we want to go. So show those before and those striving efforts. You want to develop key performance indicators to measure effectiveness. So the only way to know if your efforts are being successful is to create those measures and make sure that you are checking in to ensure that you're in line with meeting those specific indicators that you have outlined. And then also, it's really important. So, we're talking about having these safe conversations. Some of these safe conversations, it's talking about courageous conversations. And you want to make sure that you establish a safe and healthy environment where employees feel that they can engage and have these difficult and sometimes uncomfortable conversations. And some of the goals of these conversations, thank you, is to provide employees with an opportunity to share ideas and experiences which allow them to connect and come together, which is so important. You want to foster collaboration between colleagues by learning about similarities amongst each other. So the only way that you can do that is by having a conversation. Determine barriers that employees may be experiencing. So in having these conversations, there may be some things that come up that people were not aware of. And so it's really important to have these conversations so that you can remove, well, at least work towards goals of removing those barriers for individuals. And then it's so important when you do have these courageous conversations to lay out the ground rules for courageous conversations. So essentially, you want to, again, I mentioned earlier, make sure that people know that it's a safe place to share information. You want to state the expectation that participants that are committing to engage in these conversations do so in an honest manner. And we know that when people are very honest, that sometimes they are going to become vulnerable. So it's important that all people that are part of those conversations respect one another. And then you want to include the following parameters as well. We talked about safe space. Also, speak your truth and don't speak for others. Listen for understanding. So it's so important to just take a moment, breathe, and listen. It's not a time to defend. It's just a time to listen to everyone and allow them to speak their truth. And then honor confidentiality. So, in these conversations, as we mentioned earlier, people may start to share information that makes them feel vulnerable. And you want to make sure that as an employee, if you are sharing that kind of information, that people are going to honor your confidentiality. And they're not going to use it as an opportunity to somehow negatively hold it against you or anything. It's just an open forum for conversation and dialogue. And then it's also important to ask if there are any additional ground rules that you would like the team to consider in the future. So, I think it's always great to have some standards set in place, but at the same time, also open it up and allow people, if there wasn't something that you thought about, allow them to provide some additional standards as well. And then I'm going to hand it off to Alice.
Thanks, Tanisha. I also, as I'm looking through the chat, I want to thank Yvette Wilson for sharing the link to Simon Sinek's The Full YouTube. So thank you for doing that. So before we move on to get some feedback from you. We will all be sharing some resources with you. Tanisha mentioned that, but we know that when you hear about organizational culture, how can you affect that? And we hear about the courageous conversations. How do you have those things? We want to be able to provide you a roadmap that you can bring back to your organization for your DEAI efforts. Not, it's not prescriptive. You can pick and choose what you'd like, but we want to offer that to you so that you don't have to leave here empty-handed. Before we do that, though, we would also like to be able to ask you for some feedback. Because this is the first of our mini series, we really want to get some input, on how it flows and the value that you're getting out of it, so that we can continue to improve and make sure that we deliver you what you need. Also, part of the feedback is an opportunity for you to share some resources that you may have, some ideas, and or identify some resources that you wish that you had, especially after hearing this initial presentation, because it's, when you think about an organizational assessment, that's pretty big and can be overwhelming. And so we'll follow up with that after our breakout room discussion. I did put into the chat a link to be able to access this Mentimeter with some of the questions. There's a couple of options. You can either take a pic of the QR code and it'll go on your phone if you want to do that while you have the screen up, your laptop off perhaps. You can also visit menti.com, put in the code that's specifically 864826 and 0. So I have that in the chat. Or easier, you just can click on the link and it'll bring you right there. So we have those three options for you. We're going to keep that in the chat so that when you do go into your, when we go into the breakout rooms, you can perhaps, fill that out while we're doing that, or you'll have an opportunity to do it when we come back as well, when I talk about the resources and we close up. Are there any questions before we move in or before I pass it on? No? All right.
Alice, there are some questions in the chat you can address afterwards.
Okay, wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Shelley.
Okay. So sounds like we're wrapped up. I just want to jump in and move us to the next phase. We are going to jump into some breakout rooms and talk about what we just heard, answer some different questions, and just have a good general discussion. We're going to do 4 different breakout rooms, and each of the leads from the presentation are going to be in those rooms. You can move back to the lobby if you need to, but we're only going to be in there about 20 minutes and just have a really good discussion on what we just heard and really just try to give some good takeaways and tangible things for you to use. So I'm going to get ready to do that here in 2 seconds. If you have any issues, let me know in the chat. Here we go. Why are they not assigned?
Doesn't want to be user friendly.
No, this is crazy. Well, while we're doing that, Alice or Tanisha or Carissa, can you post the question? Oh, you already did. Never mind. Beat me to it. Let me try one more time. I'm just waiting for this timer to count down.
And if it doesn't work, what we can do is, folks can raise their hands and we'll have to just facilitate the discussion that way if the breakout room doesn't work for us this time. There's always a way. There is always a way.
Also, Shelley, I am posting in the chat right now some of the questions that we were wanting to ask in the breakout room. So as we're kind of going through this, folks can read those and think about them.
All right, so You want to read those questions out loud?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the questions for the breakout rooms, if they don't end up happening and we meet here, what does empathetic leadership look like in your organization? What can you do to encourage leaders to embody empathetic leadership if it does not exist? So that's question number one. And so maybe get some discussion. Do we want to skip the breakout rooms for now and just go into discussion? Does that work? Okay, perfect.
But we're ready to go. I have it all set up. Yep.
Excellent.
Okay.
I got it to work. So here we go.
Sleep is what you're saying.
Oh yeah, I woke up ready to go, excited.
Nice. So one of the questions we wanted to break out into session groups over is what does empathetic leadership look like in the organizations in which you serve? Does it show up? Does it not show up? What does it look like? So let's kind of start there.
Well, it shows up at Workforce Central. If you guys have all met our Katie Condit yet, it shows up right, left, and sideways. So very fortunate.
Yeah. What can you be a little more specific? And
there's so many ways. I can give you an example or two.
Okay.
She creates space in our staff meetings for us to acknowledge each other and share kudos. If she sees great work, she will acknowledge it right away, clearly and specifically.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very good. Any others to share?
I found throughout, the different jobs I've had, which has mostly been entry-level jobs going in and out of homelessness, there is very little empathetic leadership starting out in those entry-level jobs. For example, when I was working at the Ross and South Center, I had literally just gotten off the streets, got my first place, was taking 2 buses from Kent to South Center, doing my very best to hold this job. And I was talking to my manager about my hours because I was trying to make it match the bus route. And she looks at me and says, well, you just need to move closer. And that hit hard. It hurt so bad. And when I went to relay it to our head manager there, she laughed and thought it was the funniest thing in the world. And it was horrible. Needless to say, I found a new job pretty quickly. But without that empathetic leadership, there's no retention.
Yeah. What's one way they could have handled that differently for you?
Well, first of all, they could have asked why I was taking so many buses to a job, and I would have told them I was homeless. I had no option. I took whatever roof I could get, and been a little more willing to work with me and understanding. Just listen, ask, instead of just assume I'm being a problem.
Yeah, that's good. First, I'm sorry that you had that experience because that's horrible, but it's a fairly, that happens a lot to people. And I've noticed being, especially like being a single mom, when things arise, the shame or guilt that you feel for choosing your children over your job in the moment. And so, yeah, there's definitely some areas where people of position and power, it almost feels as though, and I hate to say there's some kind of joy out of it, but it almost feels like they get some kind of joy out of it, and it's very transparent. So I'm sorry that you experienced that. What are some other ways that it's either shown up or not shown up in your organizations?
we have some pretty powerful players on this in this room. So I would love to hear your voices. I'm looking at your faces, Lawrence, Melanie, Elise. Y'all been real quiet. And you know, I definitely know Shondea, you've been nodding, you've been giving us the amen nod a couple of times. So let's hear your voices. Greg, do you have any, you know, when you're thinking about the thoughts, I see Carlos on here, you know, Carissa's asking some deep questions. So maybe it's like you need to massage it, but some of y'all don't need massaging. Some of you have thought already. So come on, I see Peter right there. You know, you got your thought pose going on. So let's talk about it. Come on now.
Well, I'll take the bait. Good morning, everyone. I'm Pete Mayer with Metro Parks Tacoma, and I appreciate the invite. I just got from Jeff to join your group. Powerful presentation. Wow. And appreciate sharing this space with you. As a white male in a position of leadership, I think what I am sensitive to is where our agencies endeavored to engage employees through engagement surveys and queries in large groups and small groups. We get very pointed and diverse feedback that suggests opportunities for us to do something different, more or less differently. What I'm incredibly sensitive to is at times, and maybe I'm too self-critical of our organization, is the follow-up and follow-through to that feedback. And I'm curious, because I also know it's a kind of a factor of dominant culture as well, of this, you know, task-orientedness of you know, taking action, and maybe you just need to be in the space, you know, and let it kind of surround you for a bit. And so I know there's a balance to be had, and circumstance specific, obviously, but I'm curious about that, because I feel that at times the lack of action by leadership sends a message, and so I'm part of that problem. I'm part of that solution. It's something I've observed in our organization, and I don't want to contribute to cynicism. And well, you asked us what we thought, or how we, what we'd like to see done, and you didn't do anything, you didn't circle back, etc. So I just share that as observation and welcome thoughts about that. Thank you.
Okay, this is Lynn. I want to share some of my thoughts. One of the things is that after we had our issue, when we had our national crisis with George Floyd, I was bombarded by white leaders. I was already traumatized about what I witnessed, and they wanted to talk about it. That's not a moment that I wanted to talk to anybody about it. I had to process. I had to explain to my son what was taking place. And so to me, it pushed further trauma, because you want to talk. Let us know how you feel. Can you give me a minute to process? It's a national issue. I saw this on television and it did something to me. I need to process. And then when we talk, it's like you're not really listening. I had a friend, I went to visit, and he wanted to tell me how he thought the Black community needed to move forward. Nothing I told him, he wasn't listening. I stopped talking, and I went to visit for a couple of days with he and his family. And I just would sit there and I looked at him and I fake listened, because he didn't want to hear what I had to say, because in his mind, he thought he had made a solution to the Black community or what we needed to do. And that's not what we want from those in charge of us, those that we share our space with. And I don't know how to make it any clearer that we tell you, back off. We'll be one, because it makes us vulnerable to have to tell you we're traumatized. As Black women, we are charged to be strong, to hold up our own community and hold up everyone else's community, even down to the voting. And so We need a time to process and heal in our own space.
That's so good. So powerful.
I think it's tough to get to empathy before you can get to trust. And I think, and I'm not trying to derail like the topic, but it's like layers, right? It's like, if we don't even have trust, how am I even expecting empathy, right? And so I think, fundamentally, we just have a trust issue. I think philosophically, we have a trust issue, and even how we see results, whether it's individual based culture versus collective culture, and how we process and how that shows up. I think just the aspect of understanding the systemic nature of things is really the issue with white supremacy cultures, that there's just cluelessness to understanding systemic issues. And so if we can't get to that, how do I even expect you to have empathy? Because you see everything in this individualized context. But I should talk about how I see empathy. Let me give you one. I know, right? I'll throw out one. So it was tough for me to answer the question first, KT, because I'm a consultant, and so you say within my organization, and so I'm like, well, I kind of have a team of folks, but and we just do our lives together. So I think it's already kind of embedded in who we are and how we connect. And we hang out on the weekends and all that good stuff, and know each other's lives, and kids go to each other's houses and things of that nature. But thinking in regards to the work we do and some of our clients, one of the kind of cool things that I saw happen at one school was that the teacher had asked the question, how do you know you belong? And I just thought that was a really dope question that opens the door to empathy. How do you know that you belong, right? Because when we think in essence of DEI work, right, the first thing we're trying to really identify is belonging. And how do we look at belonging in this context of different forms of identities? And how does identities show up in these spaces where they know that there is a capacity of belonging? But we know the end game is that if people feel like they belong, we know they feel more capable, right? And so that's really the end game, is how do we get that to happen? And so for her to ask that question, and for the students to start talking about, wow, this is how I know I belong in a space. When these things start to show up, when I'm acknowledged this way, and all these different forms and customs start to show up about belonging and how belonging shows up in a space, then there's a freedom. Then the amygdala, right? That fight or flight, the hijack doesn't happen anymore, which oftentimes our Black and brown folks are experiencing in white dominant spaces, right? I'm on constant alert, right? I feel like Patrick Mahomes looking at the corner, like, who's going to say what? You know what I mean? And I'm only making kind of a joke, but serious, that there is this, okay, what kind of tightrope do I need to be on today? How do I need to change my voice today? How do I not appear intimidating to you today? Right? Like everything, it's like appease to white comfort at the expense of Black pain. Like how much do I have to continue to do this? And so I think focusing on understanding how people feel like they belong into a space opens the door to greater capacity and capability.
Yeah, and oh, go ahead. Did somebody else have something? Oh, one of the things that I picked up on as you were speaking, Lawrence, how your team has it together, and that empathetic leadership and that process is so fine-tuned. And as your team is charged with going into these organizations where it's completely disrupted. So even the experience that has, where it's like, when we're like home base, this is how we feel. When we go out, we're pouring it all out, and we have to come back in and refill. And I think that happens a lot, even in organizations where employees feel like they have a safe place with their team members, but maybe not their leadership. So it has that same shift and that same ebb and flow tide that can be extremely exhausting, right? go ahead. Did somebody have, sorry, I hate Zoom because I can't like see everybody.
If I can
but
share,
just-
that'd be great.
Yes,
If you don't mind.
absolutely. Carlos, please.
Wonderful, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So I'd like to share two experiences. And if we run out of time, or if you have something to say, feel free to cut me off. The first one, an experience happened to me in the past, right, where I was out sick for a couple of days, right, and I don't get sick that often, but when I do, I go down, right. It's just like a baby, right. So I was out for a couple of days, right, and then coming back to a pile of work, right. And then early in the morning, I get a call. Didn't recognize the number, right? Because I had a company phone and also my personal phone. But this call came through my personal phone, right? And I'm like, "Oh, who's this?" I answer it, right? And it's one of my bosses, and they're like, "Hey, it's such and such." I'm like, "Oh, okay. Hey, what's going on? Have you seen my email?" I'm like, "No, I haven't. What's going on?" Well, look at it right away and get it to me in 15 minutes. I'm like, huh? Oh, okay. So, no, hey, how are you? Are you okay? Right? Anything I can do? Right? Nothing like that. Right? So at that point, I'm like, okay, right? It's not, so, and then me as an employee, I feel I sacrifice a lot, right? I give it all I have, right? So something like that for me, doesn't show any empathy, right? It's really about me and what the company or organization needs. You don't matter, right? Really profits over people, right? And I don't want to be a part of that culture at all, right? Which is the reason why I'm an entrepreneur, right? Because I can dictate the culture, right? I can hire people that are in the same frequency, same wavelength, and are able to share my values, vision, and mission, right? So that I wanted to share that one experience. Another experience, since you shared, Carissa, that video with Simon. I remember seeing something where it said, your employees don't work for you, you work for your employees, right? Because it's kind of like that pyramid, right? Like this person at the top, CEO, right? And a long time ago, I remember that being flipped, saying that CEO is at the bottom. You're working for everybody else, not the other way around, right? So that's kind of the culture that I like to embrace and incorporate into my own business. And then there was another time, right? There was this military boss, right? I come from sales, so it's very cutthroat. It's like, make your numbers or you're out, right? Like that. And he came to me, right? A new boss, right? He came in here, you came in all headstrong. Hey, this is the way it's going to be. This is, and I've always been a top salesperson, right? I worked very hard for that, right? And I invested a lot of time in me having the skills, right? And, being able to perform at a high level, right? So he comes in there, he's like, hey, you're going to do this. This is going to be your schedule. I said, no. That's not the way it works, right? You're here to serve me, not the other way around, right? You look at my numbers, right? And if there's a problem with that, I'm one of the top reps, consistently, number one in the office, sometimes in the region, et cetera, right? And we fought for like 2 hours just going at it. No, I'm the boss and this and that, and you're going to do it the way I say. He comes from the military, right? And I said, no, that's not the way it works, right? I do what works for me, right? And I do what works for my family, right? As long as I'm making my numbers, we're good, right? And then, so he tried for months and months, right, to pressure me, and I just pulled back. I sandbagged him straight up, right? And I told my coworkers, they're like, is he doing that to you too? They're like, yeah, he's coming in all crazy. And I'm like, let's shut him down, right? Let's get rid of him. Like I straight up told that to my teammates, right? Who I had a great relationship with, right? We're a team, and this guy's coming in and disrupting everything. So it got to a point, maybe a month later, he's like, all right, you win, right? He's like, set your own schedule. If you do this within the month, right, then I'll leave you alone. You could, obviously you got to do work. I'm like, of course, I don't get paid unless I work, right? It's all about making numbers and doing sales, right? So he told me that, and within a week, I met because I was sandbagging. I was actually holding back on some sales, right? Because I was actually thinking of moving and going to another company, right? And then I hit it, right? And he's like, whoa, right? And then I think within a month or two, right? I think he gave that offer to everybody else, right? We were actually the number one team in the office after a couple months, right? And then after I hit that, he's like, whoa. He's like, He's like, but you're still going to be working, right? I'm like, yeah, of course. You know, like I told you, you know, if I don't work, you know, I don't make money. Right. So I think that it kind of exemplifies, right, that you need to work with your team member, really understand them. What are their needs, not just the company needs, right? And what are shared goals? What are your personal goals? What are your goals outside the organization, right? Because you need to think about the person, right? Not just the profits and the numbers, because that is not a culture that I personally want to be a part of. But I wanted to share that with everybody. Hopefully somebody got something out of that. Thank you.
That's awesome. You can come help us do the training. That was great. Thanks everybody for joining the breakout room. See you in the main.
The lobby is getting full again. Look at our people coming back into the lobby. Hello,
what's going on?
hello. Wow, look at the room filling back up again. Okay.
What's up? What's in the lobby?
Yes, we in the lobby. All right, Mike. Don't cut up. Yes. All right. So we have a thread going. Okay, so it's like 69 folks back in here. All right. So Mike, your segment isn't over yet. I think it's general discussion now from the breakout rooms. I don't know who in this amazing group of leaders who have taken us on this journey will lead us into a quick group discussion, or maybe you want to just recap. Somebody from your room might want to the co-leads from each room, just recap what you got out of it. So we'll start with Carissa because she was in room 1 with me. So Carissa, you start with room 1 and we'll just go from there. Just a quick recap of what you got out of that discussion.
Sure. Our group had some great discussion around what empathetic leadership, how it's shown up in organizations, and then equally how it has been dismissive in an organization and not there, and the importance between the two. When not being in the organization, how quickly folks want to jump ship, right? Like, I don't want any part of this. You're not seeing me, you're not hearing me. And then the flip side, for those who have experienced that empathetic leadership or that good culture, how they want to stay connected and grounded within. We heard some really great stories of it. We've heard some heartbreaking stories, and even some transitional stories where it started with an empathetic leadership, and through the behaviors of the employees, it forced the leadership to then become empathetic leaders and let them kind of have their own reign on things where necessary. And then how their business skyrocketed from there. And so again, it's just a testament to the importance of organizational culture and empathetic leadership that can really help an organization thrive. So thanks to everyone in group 1 who shared some of their stories. Excited to get some of that information out from Menti onto everyone. So make sure that you go and do that assessment. And I will pass it off to Sarah.
Yeah, our conversation was also really good. We started off with sort of a discussion about the unique challenges around the transition to COVID and continuing to sort of work remotely, and how some leaders have adjusted well to that and some maybe not so much, and some of the things that folks can do to display more empathetic leadership in that virtual setting, and some of those challenges. Then we moved on to sort of talk about how important it is for leaders to sort of be listening to their staff and sort of paying attention and actually moving forward with the actions instead of like just sort of taking notes. And Courtney said sort of just checking the box, because that's no longer, you know, really going to move us forward, and is not acceptable anymore. Yeah, I apologize if I missed anything important for the rest of my group. But yeah, I will pass it to Alice.
Thanks, Sarah. So my group took a little bit of a different angle, and I think that's quite interesting. I think it's important to bring to this larger group to consider. We really talked about the definition of what empathy is in terms of, and that it really all acknowledge the use that empathy does not necessarily capture what we really are trying to talk about. And along with that, and I'd like to actually invite Davida if she wants to speak to a little bit about that, because she could speak better to it than I can. Is that something you feel comfortable doing, Davida?
Yes, even though you were
Wonderful.
doing just fine.
Well, but I won't do it as well as you. So I'd love it if you just share a little bit about what you're.
Well, really what I was sharing, and as we were talking, was when we're looking at the word empathy, the foundation of the definition of empathy is the capacity to feel and understand what others are going through. And when we're looking at the aspect of equity, especially racial equity, there is a space where there will not be any empathy. There cannot be any empathy. And I gave the example of if I have a supervisor who's a white female, white male, they're not going to be able to have empathy of what I'm going through as a Black woman leader. And I can't expect them to have empathy. And so we talked about, okay, is it really empathy that we're looking for? Granted, that supervisor is an amazing co-conspirator with me, and they're great, and they have space for conversations, and they're doing the work, but they just can't have the empathy. And it sometimes it's almost unfair to expect that, because unless it's your lived experience, you can't understand that. So we talked about the word compassion, and we talked about a few other words, and understanding that, maybe that's just the word we have now, or it's not the perfect word, but really being able to really unpack and have that conversation of what that looks like.
I love that. I love that. I love that. That was powerful. And it also speaks from your perspective, like perspective, thought. Is our demand for that realistic? Is our demand for that realistic? So I love that. Thank you so much, Davida, for sharing that. All right, who's next?
How am I supposed to go after Davida saying all that?
You can come.
I got you, sis. I got you.
You good. You good.
No, that was a really good message, and I can definitely relate to what Davida just said. But our group, we really kind of deep dive and talked about some of the tools that you can use for courageous conversations. So just some standards and some guidelines that you can have in place to really help through those conversations. We also talked about empathetic leadership in the sense of how do you ensure that you have the right leaders in place? And when those leaders don't necessarily have those specific skill sets, what are those next steps? So, we just kind of had a discussion centered around, yes, it's really important to really train our leaders, provide them with the tools that they need to allow them to have more of a different perspective. But of course, if those leaders do not progress and take in that training, hey, maybe it's time to assess whether or not these people are the right fit for the organization, especially if that's the culture that you're striving for. If you have particular individuals in leadership that are not moving towards that culture, hey, you need to look at some things there. So we really looked at that, and then we also looked at ways that we can also kind of talk about providing an engaged conversation with employees as well, and letting people know that it's okay to speak up and bring forth any issues and concerns. That really, that's the only way to empower change, is people need to voice their concerns.
Hey, Shelly, real quick, can we share that last Minty slide? And then also Alice wanted to share some of the resources that we're putting together to wrap up our presentation.
Sure, I think Jeff can do it. I think, or whoever has the.
Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. Do you want me to, I'll share mine real
Go
quick.
ahead.
Perfect. Sorry.
No problem.
Let me pop through this real quick.
Oh, just passed it.
I just went through it real quick, didn't I?
Yes,
Alice.
You can actually flip to, if you want to just flip to the resources page, we can just go there. And then we can just, I put the link again for the menti.com into the chat, just for you to be able to take a look at. And then we'll close out like after, when we're done with this full meeting, the full scope, we'll put the Menti back in the chat again so that you can maybe take it with you. It'll remain open for several days, so that if you don't have an opportunity to do it today and you want to tomorrow, based off of some of the resources you're hearing about right now, you can do that then. So it's really kind of hard to follow the great breakout room discussion we have, but I do want to share a little bit with you about some of the resources that we've been gathering. So for example, when you think about how we're going to effect organizational change, as I mentioned before, and or take the DEAI work back into your organization, it's often overwhelming. And where do you start? There's so many resources out there for you, but we wanted to be able to give you kind of a map of how you might lay out your next, multi-year plan. If you're interested in your organization, you can clearly scale this to what you need. If you're interested in what you heard earlier, like an employee engagement survey, boom, that you could do in year one, where you can get a better idea of the climate, of the culture. We have an organizational assessment that we're actually sharing with you. That is actually a protocol for culturally responsible organizations that was put together. And specifically, I'm bringing this one up because it was put together by a coalition of communities of color and the Center to Advance Racial Equity at Portland State. And I work at Tacoma Public Utilities, and we actually went through that effort back in the fall, and the results are amazing that we got and hit on so many areas like workforce composition, service-based equity. It really identified where our gaps are, so that then we can actually put those to use and take some action and know where our holes are. So that's a resource we're going to provide. We're also going to be providing Courageous Conversations Toolkit that you heard earlier in the conversation, how important it is to having those conversations about race. And a link to Glenn Singleton's, his book about that. We also have unconscious bias interrupters to use. We have, if you're interested in putting together an employee resource group, or you don't know how to bring that to your organization and you're interested in a sample policy and or template that you can give to your employees, we've provided that for you as well. A number of other options as well. Pierce County Community Engagement Task Force has a website, and they are building a library of resources just for this purpose. And so you'll be able to go to that site and be able to access those particular resources. And then one other thing that I want to add, and then I'll quit talking, is that after, that's one of the value of the feedback request, is because one of the open-ended questions is we're asking you what resources either you have so that you can share and put onto that resource page, or what ones are you looking for? So for example, we were talking, we'd love to be able to have something about onboarding. How do you do that in Equitable with DEAI lens? So there's so many others that if you have that you'd really like to see, put that into the feedback. And then as a group, we are going to be reviewing that and trying to source those for you, so that when we close all of this up, I believe in June, I know Michael has better timeline with what's going to happen with the mini series, but we'll be offering that later on this year. So don't know if you're open for questions or what. But.
Yeah, I mean, and if you have questions, send them in the chat to Alice directly so she can respond. Wow, I mean, I just think everybody needs to give a round of applause to the people's group right here. Was this the people's group? Was this the people's group?
This was the people's group.
Okay. So,
I'm jumping in, my fault.
You jumping in? So come on. So
Tim Jumper said the people's group is on fire. So yes. I'm officially handing it back to you, Shelly. Go ahead.
Oh, you did good, Mike. You're good. Okay, so this is what I want you to understand. And I always say this is not a family reunion. So now if you've been traveling on this road with us and you have just been observing, this is why this is the work that's happening while you're observing and you're not wondering where you fit. This is a great example of the fact that work is happening. Things are happening. There's a lot of investment going into the work that we're doing. We're not just sitting around playing around. So pick a place that you want to bring your best and highest contributions. And we want you to be a part of the work, the effort. Don't just sit around peeking and then, try to get bits and pieces. We are doing work and work that's breeding results. So take the survey, check in. I'm assuming as we're transitioning over to these quick initiative updates, I'm just going to skip the people's group. I think they gave us a whole lot just today, but Jeff said, no, I got something to say. So no, we're going to get an update from, it's time for our updates real quick. So we'll start with the people's. We'll start, Jeff.
Real quick, I just wanted to clarify. So within the mini-series, there are groups that are hitting the topics. Yeah. The organizational structures group is the one that's putting this on. So the people group within the mini-series is so just to clarify, because we have a people's group that's a sub-working group. So just to clarify that, organizational structures is the one putting this on. Congrats, fantastic job today.
Great work.
Yeah. So, but we're going to start with the people's group for the updates on our initiatives.
Yeah, and are you doing it?
Amanda is.
Okay, Amanda, and then after Amanda, outreach, organizational structures again, and then Workforce Central.
Good morning, everybody. So the People's Group has been incredibly busy, exciting. So we'll go ahead and update with My 5 Thrive. So that initiative is basically to increase awareness of available career pathways and options for young adults and their parents to foster curiosity and action towards entering the local workforce. They have developed their mission statement and have begun reaching out to the community to gain connections and see what is already there available there. The Speakers Bureau, which is an opportunity for people with lived experience to kind of share their story with providers in hopes that they can be a sounding board for new programs and initiatives within the community and to strengthen ties. We have our first speaking engagement on the calendar, and we also have 2 speakers going through our training process. So super excited about that one. We're launching, guys. We've been working on this for a while. So, and our education pods has taken a kind of different direction than when we initially began. So now we're looking at creating co-ops within programs. We have a couple of possible partnerships on the table that we're working for. And there's been information gathered from Bates Technical College about a program they have so that we can get the parents leading the co-ops certified in early education. And so that is going excellent. Currently, as far as the needs for all 3 groups, the I-5 Thrive currently doesn't have any needs at this time. And the Speakers Bureau is looking to book some engagements, as well as we're looking for somebody who is really good at grant writing. We have one person working on our grant application, but he would like some assistance in going over that. And again, the education pods, it would be great to have a note taker. Other than that, those are the needs for the initiatives. However, the People's Group is currently looking to fill 2 leadership positions. And those positions is our strategy and I'm drawing a blank, and our spokesperson. That's the easy one, right? So we have an application available, and I will go ahead and drop the link to that application in the chat. It's super easy. Nothing too hardcore. And yeah, thank you everybody for listening to my super quick updates. I'm looking forward to seeing these applications. Should we?
Outreach is next. Who's next?
That's me, Shelly. Hi,
all right,
everybody.
After outreach, y'all just keep rolling. Outreach, then organizational structures, then workforce central. Just go next. Go ahead.
Excellent. Thank you. Great to see everybody today. So the outreach group also has been very busy. Hold on a second, Mason. We are getting ready to prepare for Collaboration for a Cause 3.0. If you're not familiar with the first two events, these were very large drive-through resource events that we put on. Goodwill so graciously hosted the last two. On Collaboration for a Cause 3.0, we plan to do major big resource events as well. We are hoping to move to South Tacoma as we are recognizing some areas that are, you know, in need of more resources where we haven't been able to maybe service them in Goodwill's particular areas. So we are focusing, trying to focus, I should say, on some specific zip codes in partnership with the Economic Security for All grant, which many of us are partners in on this meeting. And that is in 98402, 404, 409, 444, and 499. So if you are or employed at or in one of those areas, please reach out to the outreach group, and we would love to kind of do a basic community needs assessment and see what resources we can get out to those communities when we do the next Collaboration for a Cause. Secondly, if you are, I'm gonna put a plug in for our Facebook site. If you are not involved or a part of the Facebook site for the Pierce County Community Engagement Task Force, please remember to join that. Hopefully Jeff will throw up a link. One of our other missions in the outreach group was to really focus on things such as PPE distribution to our community and tie that into partnerships with the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department and beyond. Now I am starting to realize that as we still do need PPE, there's a lot of people asking about vaccines. So I have posted in the Pierce County Community Engagement Facebook page yesterday, the amazing page that Tacoma Pierce County Health Department has put up as far as vaccine information. So we hope to collaborate and keep that updated as well and throw some more sites out there. We are also working with our Diversicolusion group. I just spelled that totally wrong to Courtney. It was funny, I tried. I know it's on the arm of my sweatshirt, but I get it wrong all the time. This was an amazing meeting that we had today. It was so exciting to listen to this presentation because it really gives our Diversicolusion group the opportunity and the kind of the roadmap to go out there and work with those organizations that have put out an EDI statement and really helping to hold those organizations accountable. So we're definitely looking for some help with that and how we can start to connect and get more organizations involved in this EDI journey that we are all going through. And the last thing is our universal intake form, which we have discussed. So what we've realized on this in the last few weeks is this is a very, very high level, huge conversation that has taken off from initially it was very Tacoma centric, and then it kind of grew into Pierce County, and now we're seeing the need for it on a statewide level. So those conversations are all over the place. I hope to have something a little bit more formalized that we can talk about and maybe start with some baby steps as far as how we kind of get to that goal. So please, if you're interested in any of these, join the outreach group. We will start having a few more meetings as we prepare for Collaboration for a Cause 3.0. So if events is something that you or your organization is interested in, we definitely could use the support, sponsorship, and volunteers for that. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Kels. With the organizational structures group, some of the things we have going on, obviously, is the mini-series. The mini-series is almost like the trailer to the big production, the big motion picture. And so the next 4 months, well, I guess now it's the next 3 months, you will learn about practice, policy, and promotion. And then in June, we are working on a full Lens of Equity Summit to take all of those parts and translate them into a workshop of larger proportions. And so that is our next initiative that we're working on, is getting that summit created and constructed. The other initiatives that we're working on is onboarding gold standard. And so one of the things that we realized, even in doing our presentation today, is there's not a lot of information or work around a great onboarding process. And so organizational structures wants to create one for ourselves and the Pierce County Community Engagement Task Force, but ideally as something where other organizations could come and use that in their own organization and make it transferable to them. So those are a few of the initiatives that we have going on. And so if you want to come join us, we would love to have you. We meet third Thursday of the month. And if you're interested, if you want to reach out to Cindy Caldwell, and she will get you on the invite list.
And those are all of our initiatives, all of our groups. Thank you guys all so much. I want to take a moment and introduce this team to one of my colleagues from Workforce Central. Monette Creighton's coming on, bringing some great information, something that we've been working on in the background for a while to really try to support this community. So please welcome a colleague of ours from Workforce Central, willing to just get to know you guys, but to bring some information to this team.
Hi, thank you all for a great meeting, great group. Really enjoy it. And I work in contracts and compliance at Workforce Central, and Jeff and Tamar said I could come and announce to you all today that we have released our new Young Adult Services RFP, which you also on your Facebook page, so you can find information there. But want to really encourage you all to take a look at this RFP. It's a little different, it's a little fresh. I won't say much more than that, but we are really working on equity through one of these structures and mechanisms to really make a difference for young adults in our community. Things are moving quick on this, so please don't wait if your organization or others might be interested. Proposals are due March 3rd, so a month from today. There is also a bidders conference next Tuesday, next Tuesday, the 10th. And you can email us our procurement to get an invitation to that bidders conference. But all the information is on our website, and you can get to our website from your Facebook page, Pierce County Community Engagement Task Force page. So please take a look, please spread the word. It's a really kind of unique opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Monette. Just to stay track of time, respect you guys' time for being with us. We will not be going into the subgroup breakout rooms. We will make sure that anyone that does have a room, you will be invited to their group as they get their next meeting set up. Again, if any of you guys have not joined the task force yet, please, www.pccetf.org, hit that join button and just continue this journey with us. I'm so thankful for the org structures group and the people subgroup within that. Today was just an amazing conversation. It was fire, in what they did, and they kept, all of us in the forefront of things that we all go on, just with the understanding, like I said, we all come from different religions, colors, beliefs, creeds, but we're all one. Especially in this group. This is a group you come to if you need something, you want to talk about something, you need support on something. We are all here for that. I know we have a huge journey, especially with this DEAI work, and all of our organizations in some way, shape, or form, we've all felt it and we've all dealt with it. But these are the reasons why we're having these conversations now, because sometimes people just need to be retrained. Always keep it in mind. It's not who you don't promote, it's not who you hire, it's who you're afraid to fire and demote that keeps businesses going down. So let's keep moving forward. Let's keep doing the things that we do. Let's stay honest with each other and stay honest to yourselves.